I think our guest was right, to allow the artists to create very positive visual narratives of these cultural assets. Like I said earlier on, either envision them back, being restituted back into the community that they were looted from, or putting it within the context, the social context of where they were taken from. And so these are some of the thoughts that fed into the creation of some of these visual narratives. Exactly. And then these two, we also, another very key, thank you, Jan, for putting the slide on this. Another key decision that Jan and I took was not to use images of human remains or skulls in the book, because in certain African cultures it is deemed culturally inappropriate to put images of the dead in the public domain, and also it doesn't put these important historical figures, some of whom were activists and freedom fighters themselves, it doesn't put them in a positive light. So we had this conversation with the artists to put some of these historical figures in the communities that their lives were taken. We asked them to put them in a more dignified positions, because in their community they are not seen as victims per se of colonial violence, but they are rather respected and regarded as warriors in their own right. For instance, Nehanda is highly respected in her homeland in Zimbabwe, and Manji Meli is also very much seen as a warrior because of some of the important resistance that he led against colonial interest in his territory. And so when you see some of these figures rather than the human remains in the museums, then this is the thought process that guided the artists to illustrate them in this dignified light. I don't know how much time we have left, Delian. If you can let us know, and then I'll just end it here.
No, please keep talking. I'll say we can have at least 18 minutes for this exposition, and then perhaps an hour for Q&A, because I know we have to Jan at 11 p.m. or my version of 11 p.m. has to shoot. So no, you have I'll say maybe 18 minutes. So yeah, feel free.
Okay, good, great. Yes, and these are illustrations by Frankie Minja. He's a Cameroonian comic book illustrator, and these are his illustrations of the chapters that he worked on. And another historical inaccuracy that came in the initial stages of producing his chapters. What happened was that Frankie presented illustrations of the colonial officers carrying the carved wooden plaque themselves, and we had to go through this conversation of making sure that some of these are historically situated in the way and manner in which the looting took place. And you can understand that during some of these so-called punitive expeditions, there were some Africans who were working in the colonial mission, and they were the ones that actually did the carrying on the orders of the colonial officers. And so we had to flip that illustration again to give a realistic picture of what actually happened. And in the context of the ancestral guardian figures from the Yuri, you can see the aggression that's Frankie Minja simulated in this particular illustration. So you see there's a kind of tag. There's like a push and pull situation where the colonial officer is pulling this sculpture from the priest in the shrine space. And so in a way we depart from the usual static pictures of colonial plunder in terms of the sculptures and the cultural belongings in the museums that is put in the books. We decided to put some of these stories and narratives in action so that readers will understand some of the social context under which these cultural belongings were looted. And so this is how we curated the illustrations in the book, and you see a kind of consistent visual narrative that goes along with all these cultural belongings in a way that is very digestible to a wide range of readers, because we didn't also want to make it look too academic that we only limit our audience to scholars and researchers. We want a high school student to be able to pick the book, look at the illustrations, read, and just follow along the important conversations and chapters in the book. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are illustrations by Bali Baruti and Brighto again. Jan, can we go on the next slide?
Apologies. Yep.
It's not moving. Okay, no problem. So maybe I'll also just talk about the interdisciplinarity of this book and how important it was to bring the multiple voices that we brought together to be able to put some of these important narratives together. I think in Jan's presentation, he showed us a breakdown of all the contributors in the book. And for me, that is also an act of resistance, not relying on scholars alone to be able to tell these stories, to be able to give us a holistic picture of colonial plunder. We had perspectives from curators, we had perspectives from institutions, scholars, researchers, artists, and I also see that as an act of resistance, because we are departing from the normal structure that some of these books take. So I think this book is one of a kind, and it immerses you into a different frame of mind to be able to get a different picture of colonial plunder. And the preface to the book was written by Peju Lai Wola, and one of the reasons why we opted for Peju to write the foreword is because of her connection to the Benin bronzes, but she's coming with a different perspective to contextualize all these other important cultural belongings that have not really had the spotlight to be able to generate the kind of conversations, for instance, that the Benin bronzes have generated. We have had a lot of conversations and Benin dialogues, for several decades now. And what makes this volume particularly important is the spotlight on equally important cultural belongings that have not really been studied or given the the attention that it demands. I don't know if Jan, this is something that you can also speak to, the importance of spotlighting these particular cultural assets in the way that we did it in the book.
I think we can perhaps talk about it in the discussion.
Okay.
2 days ago, the Dutch state actually, I mean, Nigeria got 119 looted cultural assets from Benin back from the Dutch state. So this is very timely that we're having this conversation today, and also it shows that say Benin 1897 has taken the world stage and is a blueprint for restitution. Say Germany returned Benin bronzes, the Netherlands returned Benin bronzes, the Horniman Museum in Oxford returned Benin bronzes, private collectors and descendants of officers returned Benin bronzes, but Benin is but the visible side of the
Exactly.
iceberg. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why this volume becomes particularly important, because then people get to really see how important other cultural assets are in the other communities. For instance, Fogar's chapter on the Ngonso, there's been a lot of talk and activism going on in Cameroon about the return of Ngonso, but we don't get to hear uh, a lot of this activism, being put into practice, as in like returning, the Ngonso until recently. This whole discussion took heat.
Mhm. Yes, indeed. No, beautiful family. I think I agree with Jan's suggestion. We can elaborate more in the questions, because sometimes the questions is what takes you to places you wouldn't imagine. So Sela,
Yeah,
Jan, thank you both very much. I think you've given us a fantastic introduction, a very broad expansion of the work you've done, the motivations behind the work, the beautiful experiences that have bonded it and brought it together in ways that perhaps again you wouldn't have imagined beforehand. And in that state, I go back to Jan's question I was trying to answer before, when he highlighted specifically the Asante and the Akan. So, Jan, I will take off the presentation at this point, because I'm going to, rather than talk about it, we can see it for ourselves, right? So now I worked in this place in West London for over a decade. It's also the same place where my wife, Verona, lived, and I never saw her during that decade. I made many friends in that area, never saw her once until such time when Ancestral Voices was ready to be made. Now, about 3 years ago, I was walking down a road in the same place I've been for over a decade, and I saw the name of a road. And I thought to myself, the phonetic pronunciation of this word sounds like Kumasi, but it sounds like somebody has spelt it so badly that I'm not sure. I have to look this up. It came as a thought. I took a picture, totally forgot about it. Now, guess what happened then? I get a copy of okay, this thing always does this. Oh, these virtual backgrounds. I get a copy of the book. I'm reading chapter 4, I believe, or is it? Yes, chapter 4, about the looting of the Asante. And in there's a general describing the place they went to loot. And guess how he spelt the Kumasi? See there? This is a road in West London. And this is exactly the spelling that the general, and I'll get his name, but you know what, actually, because I'm telling you all this, learning, remember, often comes from within. We know indigenous cultures, one of the key things is that much of what you know is already within, that needs a certain activation. Yeah. So I went back and for this show, took a picture. You see there, that's Kumasi Road. And guess the day that I came to take the picture with, I had a beautiful guide. He was there. We had a good conversation. And I said, yeah, boom, this is going to be a great show. The work that's been done is beyond excellent. So you see, I forgot to do that research at the time when I saw the name of the road, and as much as phonetically made sense. But now I have more than enough, if you want to call it activation, to go and see how perhaps this road relates to all of that looting and plundering that happened once upon a time. And this is how a book, yeah, comes to carry you on a force back to, because of the intentions behind and how the book is made. So, here at Ancestral Voice, we don't try and prove anything to anybody. We know we're all spiritual beings first, having a physical experience. That force connects us in so many interesting and important ways. Again, which is why such work is important. So, without much further ado, audience, I hope you're all ready. I have a million and one questions, but the show is not about me. It's about how we're learning together. So I think one of the first things we'll do is, I think also what I should do is I will open the studio for, if you prefer to come and speak and say something that will maybe help the audience better understand, because sometimes the text, you can miss things. But we will start here with One Winged Angel 1. Thank you again, beloved. Good to see you again. What are some of the conditions of return for these items? I know Seller is going to be coming back in, Jan. So would you do us the courtesy and take this one, please? Jan, sorry, you're muted.
Sela is back. So
Yeah.
Sela, the question is, what are some of the conditions of returns for these items or these cultural belongings? Do you want to talk about the Ashanti case with the Vienna and the British Museum? And I can talk about, say, uh, uh, the German case with Cameroon and Tanzania.
Yeah, sure, 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 sure. That's fine.
Okay, you want to start or should I?
Yeah, you can go ahead, and then I'll address the Kumasi case.
Okay. Thank you, One Wing Angel One, for the question. This is a really good question because it depends on which context you're talking about, and especially which political stakeholders are interested in restitution. And I say interested because mostly you have to convince those stakeholders that restitution is the right thing to do. Most of the people that work um, for restitution on the political level um, in Europe, in European institutions, are not really interested in say restorative justice. They are mostly interested in cultural diplomacy and how restitution can actually help um, the interest of, say, the German state or the British state or this or that institution. So the conditions, if I take the German case, the condition for restitution of something that belongs to the German state, because sometimes it belongs to, say, the municipality, sometimes it belongs to the region. But if I take something um, that ownership the ownership of the museum collection is actually at the German federal level. Then the conditions for restitution is that you have a national counterpart. So restitution cannot take place towards a community or a chieftaincy or say an organization that has advocated for the return of cultural heritage from this region, or in the case of Tanzania, for example, there were restitution claims from the district council in Moshi in the Kilimanjaro region. But the district council, if it doesn't, if it isn't backed by the Tanzanian government, then has no uh, recognition, legitimation whatsoever to be able to be a claimant. And so restitution cannot take place if you don't have the Tanzanian state and the government with it. So there is, even if the museum is ready to return cultural belongings, the state of Germany will always need to have uh, a state to state negotiation. And this is what is happening with Cameroon at the moment. So the state of Cameroon, you perhaps know about the political history of Cameroon and Paul Biya being and Cameroon being a dictatorship that was part of like French neo-colonial influence for quite a long time, and and so you have institutions in Germany and communities in Cameroon that are actually talking to each other, that are opening up, and that are working through a history of violence, and museums that are ready to repatriate those cultural belongings. But the state of Cameroon has kind of co-opted this this these negotiations and put up a ministerial committee that has no idea about what is actually in German museums that is from Cameroon. And I sit in an office with four Cameroonian researchers who are experts in this cultural heritage, and they are flabbergasted at this ministerial committee because they are not experts. They don't know anything. They cannot even negotiate with the German state. But the fact that Germany asks for a national counterpart means that the condition for restitution is that the Cameroonian state has to um, jump into negotiations. And this is a real problem because then communities, chieftaincies,